What happens when the world gets turned on its head? We're forced to look inward, perhaps become fearful, sometimes lash out at others. While there are others in the world who don't give up hope because they believe in people. Join me, Kevin Tibbles, and Amy Goldberg for our new podcast, Believe in People, where we meet those who don't give up hope.
There's no stopping Lucy Yu. From the age of 7, she had a dream to own her own bookstore. An avid reader and supporter of writers from marginalized communities, Lucy walked away from a career in order to make it come true.
Perhaps it was the isolation of the COVID lockdown, or perhaps it was the pressures of her career. In any case, Lucy Yu decided to become the first female Asian American bookstore owner in New York City.
Lucy Yu, welcome to Believe in People.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, tell us a little bit about that childhood dream of yours.
Absolutely. I always wanted to create a bookstore. It was intentionally a retirement dream, so I just scooted that timeline up a little bit. But I've always wanted to have a bookstore that represented stories that looked like mine, with writers that looked like me as well. And that was something that was really missing as a kid. So we ended up launching You and Me Books in December of last year, December of 2021. And now it's going on about 8 months.
Wow, that's quite the time to open up a bookstore. How did you feel opening it during a pandemic, Lucy?
Yeah, a really, really reliable time to open up any kind of business in the middle of a global pandemic. I knew that the hunger for books was not going to stop as the pandemic kept going. I really took a shot here. I knew I was going to have to be adaptable. I think that I was something that I knew I was always going to have to keep in mind of. So we opened up in December, ended up getting hit with the Omicron and Delta variants of COVID-19. And we just really had to stay flexible, rely on e-commerce orders as well. But the community support and the way that my customers showed up for me was just incredible. And even though I wasn't open for that long, a lot of people made sure I didn't shut down.
Well, I think we've got to talk a little bit about your own family history here, and that will lead us up to why You and Me Books. Well, first of all, you're Lucy Yu, but there is some significance to You and Me, is there not?
Yeah, I mean, the name came first and foremost as a pun because I have really bad humor and I love puns, and most people just roll their eyes when I make jokes. But it's a conversation between you and me. It's a way to bring people together, a way to share stories. The You of You and Me is my last name spelled Y-U, and the initials of the store, Y-M, are the initials of my mother's
name. Huh. So you tell a lot of dad jokes, just like I do, I take it then, is what you're saying.
Oh my God. People stop, like, when people first meet me, they think I'm funny, and then 5 minutes in, that's when the eye rolls start.
Your mother emigrated to the United States from China. Tell us a little bit. Tell us a bit. Again, I'm hearkening back to the fact when you were 7 years old, you got the idea that you wanted to start a bookstore. But all of that has to somehow be related to the fact that your mom came here and you were raised by a single mother.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine doing that at now reaching the age of where my mom was when she first came here. But she came here at a time, she actually left her country behind during the Cultural Revolution. She was growing up during a time when she didn't have easy access to education. She was working in the farms when she actually was able to apply for college for the first time. In Chinese, it's called Qi Qinian, which is 1977. It was the big year when universities was first able to, when students were first able to go to universities after the Cultural Revolution. And so she was really pushing to live a life where education and storytelling was such an easy access for her future and for her kids. And so she immigrated here around her early 30s. She was in Canada first, and she decided she hated the cold, ended up moving to California, and she raised me up alone. And it was not easy for her to do. I think, especially now, seeing her be so close to my age now, I can imagine how she did that. And we had so many stories of us two growing up. And as I've gotten older, we've only become closer as mother and daughter. So I wanted to showcase the stories that she brought to me. And without her and her legacy and her story, I wouldn't be here. And so there's got to be some semblance of her and her name within my story.
Hmm.
And Lucy, I understand that there was a book that you and your mother shared as part of your inspiration. What was that book that influenced you?
Yeah, it was the first time we read Kite Runner together, actually. We both saw bits of ourselves and our history in that book. And it was the first book that we really connected with. I was very young when I read that book, probably a little bit too young, but it was the first time we were able to share a story together and connect both of our lives.
Hmm. Is that where you got your love of reading from growing up with your mother?
Absolutely. Both my mom and her mom. So my grandmother on my mom's side, they're just avid readers. My grandmother was a principal of a school for many years. She's written in journal entries for her entire life. So she's a big writer as well. And we all are, I think, extrovert, introverts. We portray ourselves as extroverts, but the introvert within us just is so hungry for these stories.
Yeah. Well, I have to ask you, your first career had nothing to do really with running a bookstore. And you mentioned retirement earlier on in the conversation. You were 27? Is that when you decided to switch horses midstream or what?
It was. It was a little bit, I'm still 27, almost 28. But I worked as a chemical engineer for a couple of years, and then I worked as a supply chain manager in the food e-commerce business. So a lot of that surprisingly has some transferable skills, but regardless, it was a huge pivot to decide to open my own business. I think I'm on the younger side of starting my own business. So knowing that, I was going to make a lot of mistakes, but I'm going to continue to make mistakes for the rest of my life. So I might as well start early and learn faster.
And Lucy, so what was that moment for you? What was that pivoting time where you decided I'm going to switch gears now, as opposed to something a little bit later on?
I think the global pandemic affected us all in a lot of ways in realizing how short life is. I had lost one of my best friends, and he passed away at 26. And I realized that maybe I won't make it to 27, 20. Maybe I won't make it to retirement. And I want to fully live out the dreams that I have set for myself, because that's what he did. And so that was something that really pushed me to kind of leave the stable route of what I've been living and what I saw myself continuing to live for the next few decades, and do something that was really passionate and cared a lot for.
And now you are in Chinatown in Manhattan, New York City, and your moniker is the first Asian American woman to open a bookstore in Manhattan. Whose books do you sell when you talk about marginalized communities? What kind of communities are you talking about?
Yeah, this is a really great question. I think a lot of people see me and they see that I'm Asian American, so they expect all of our inventory to be Asian American, which is not the case. We have so many stories based on immigrant experiences, immigrant authors, largely writers of color. And I have so many wonderful Indigenous stories on our shelves as well, which deserve way more of a front seat than they usually get at bookstores. So I just wanted people to come in that had similar experiences to me of being a minority in their place growing up and their experiences, and not have to be a minority in seeing their stories on the shelves. They can come in and they don't have to search very far to find a story that represents them.
How interesting. They're not a minority, and there are no minorities in your store.
There are no minorities in my store. Exactly. That's a beautiful way to say it.
Because you're welcoming to everyone.
Exactly. The whole idea is, even crafting the shop is to create a space where it feels like a friend's living room, and you can just sit on the rug and open up a book and have some coffee and chat with someone. And that's the whole idea that extends to the stories on the walls. I think everyone can find a little bit of home in the stories there.
So, and Lucy, so Kevin and I, yeah, exactly.
I'm sorry. What's the reaction been?
I thought this was the little dream that I had for myself, and no one was going to show up. And 3 months in, I would have to pay people to come in the doors. But what it's become is this incredible place for people to come together. It's become a community hotspot. I've worked with other wonderful organizations such as Send Chinatown Love, Welcome to Chinatown in the area. And it's a place where we can really just step outside of the world and come to a cozy reading room, meet some strangers, go to a couple events. It's been phenomenal. I think I've never really seen community in this way until opening up the store.
That's very inspiring. So, Lucy, for those of us and our listeners and viewers, tell us that the journey as far as opening up the business, the challenges that you may have faced. We understand that you have now 2,000 titles. I mean, this has happened in the span of 8 months. So, help us sort of wrap our heads around how this happened.
Oh my gosh, it is not easy. It is not easy starting your own business, but it's also so much fun. I think anyone can do anything they set their mind to if they're resourceful and ask the right questions. You have to come into the process prepared, but you can't spend so much time thinking about all the what ifs to the point where it keeps you from moving forward. So back in January of 2021 is when I really started sitting down and looking at budgets, looking at what was the general price of real estate at the time, what can I afford with my savings? Because I poured my life savings into this business. And I realized that might not be enough. So I started a GoFundMe in May, and that even propelled me to open up even sooner. I saw the incredible support from people that I've never met before that just believed in the idea of this bookstore and believed in something that I was really passionate about. And that really helped me out too. The planning process took probably 7 months, 8 months before finding an actual retail space, figuring out budgeting. And New York City is particularly unkind in their permits that you have to get. So getting all the permits ready and getting everything settled in. It's not an easy feat, and I don't say that I'm proud of myself often, but I'm incredibly proud of myself to be able to climb over that mountain and open up a store. I don't even think it hit me until probably 4 or 5 months after opening the store. I'm like, oh my gosh, I own this place. I did this, and it is just, everything from the orders that come through for pre-orders online. I ship them myself. Sometimes I make my dog carry them with me to the post office. All the social posts, all the events, all the logistical planning, it all comes down to one person doing it. And that's something that has an extra bit of love and care that you can't find just buying books online.
Well, I was just going to ask you about that because I like to read, and I love to read in the afternoons. But it's almost like an old record store too, bookstores, record stores, where there's an actual physical thing that you can interact with. You can look at the cover. You can't judge a book by the cover, but at least you can hold the darn thing. And as wonderful as ordering a book online and getting it tomorrow morning is, I do miss that personal interaction with a book. And so you're offering that, and hats off to you, I guess is what I'm saying. What tips do you have for any other 26-year-olds that are out there, 27-year-olds that want to jump off the high diving board without a life jacket on?
Oh my gosh. It is terrifying. I think that the best thing I can say is something I've had to learn in the last year is to be kind to myself. I'm the only one running this. And if I'm so hard on myself to the point where I break, that's not a sustainable process for anyone. That's not a sustainable way to move forward in yourself and in your business. And it just, I realized that I couldn't keep being the toughest critic for myself if I was going to succeed. So I think that is for, first and foremost, just believing in yourself. That just takes a little bit extra, and plan, but don't over plan.
Yeah.
So working yourself to death isn't the best. Working yourself to death isn't the best business model.
It's not my favorite business model, personally. I think I was doing that in the corporate world. I was like, I'll just keep working. I'll keep working until 60, 70 hours a week. And I'm like, I can do that now, but you have to figure out a way to rest in between too.
Yeah.
It's so true. It's so true, because what Kevin was just mentioning around, just breaking your back. I mean, I was just going to ask you about self-care. When you self-doubt creeps in, or when you're not feeling, because you're running this yourself, where do you seek support? Where do you get your inspiration? Where do you keep going? Like, how does that work for you?
That is probably the most challenging part of all this, because I love the idea of self-care and rest. And I think sometimes there's not the most amount of space for that in a small business owner. And especially if you're trying to climb this mountain of getting your business on the ground and running, there may not always be time for self-care. So I have to, and then when you get into the mindset of that and you have 10 minutes and you're like, I need to rest for these 10 minutes, and you can't. And then you get, in your head about that, and you get upset at yourself for that too. That's a waste of 10 minutes. But I think that if I can just find 5 minutes a day to just close my eyes and just take deep breaths, I think having a way to increase my own confidence, and knowing that even if things don't go as expected, I have tried my best, and then there's always learnings that can happen. And thinking with that positive growth mindset, without a toxic positivity component, is a really tough balance that I'm still trying to figure out every day. But I love the focus on mental health and how that can be. That's just the most beneficial thing to starting a business. Therapy is amazing, and as someone who's always struggled with anxiety and depression, that's something that's top of my mind for me. Making sure that I can take care of myself throughout this process.
And books are therapy.
Books are therapy. Books are, reading is therapy. And when I first started, I was working 2 jobs. So the first thing to go was my reading. And that's something that was always bringing me so much joy. And that's why I started this business in the first place. So even on a 45-minute subway home, that's my time. If I want to read, if I want to write, if I just want to not think about anything, that can be my time to just rejuvenate a little bit.
I was wondering whether or not, because you do share the name of the store with your mother, whether or not it was important for you, for your mother to be accepting of this wild and crazy idea of yours, and whether or not she has been.
Great question. It's always going to be important for my mom to be accepting and excited about the things I'm doing. But I know that she has a lot of hesitancies for anything that veers on the riskier end of things. She left a country with a lot of uncertainties just so she can have more stability in her life. So when I'm telling her I'm leaving my very nice, stable retirement plan engineering job to open up my own bookstore, I'm sure she's not the most thrilled about it. So I first told her when I had everything in place, I was like, okay, I've gotten the LLC, I've gotten the permits, and I've gotten the space, and I've signed the lease. Now I can tell her, because nothing she can say can steer me away from actually opening up the store. She was really worried for a while, but when I first opened, she stayed with me for about 3 weeks and interacted with everyone that came into the store and talked with all the customers. And she left back to Los Angeles, and she called me and she said, I've never known community until I've seen a store like yours. And now she got an Instagram and she's stalking me on Instagram all the time. So we've gone the other end of the pendulum.
Well, I guess we should all say hi to your mom at this point in the conversation then. Hi, Mom.
Hey, Mom.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So your mother lives in California.
She does.
Can I ask you, the name of our little podcast here is Believe in People. So you've just told us your story and about the people that you are helping. It sounds to me like you are helping people get noticed. You are helping people to share their stories, their beliefs, their experiences, people who may otherwise not have been noticed. But I have to ask you, why do you believe in people?
It's been hard, I think, in the time when there's so much bad news out there. It's really easy to go down the rabbit hole of we're doomed, and there's so much going wrong all the time. And I think that's being fed more in an accessible manner than it's ever been before. But the way that I talk to people, I have this wonderful regular that comes in that writes this incredible multilingual children's book about a tomato wanting to turn red. And every time she comes in, she brings in some food or some bubble tea for me, and I exchange it for a latte. And we just sit and we chat for 2 hours, and I ask her about her week, and I see her kids grow up in the last couple months. And having that small interaction with a couple people throughout the week has made me believe in the beauty of humanity. As cheesy as that sounds, I believe that truly people are looking out for each other and figuring out little ways to care for each other. And even if the big things do seem scary and do seem terrible, we have to remember the little shining pieces of light of people that are here that, don't really know me past a couple of months. And we found this strong connection. And we're finding ways to check on each other and figure out ways to move forward in a more beautiful way.
And in fact, Lucy,
despite everything that happened in the pandemic,
piece of hope. Yeah.
What was that? I'm so sorry.
Despite everything that happened in the pandemic, despite all the fear, there are those to be made.
Absolutely. There's endless amounts of bad news that will continue to come every single day. And I myself had a lot of trouble getting out of that rut too. I felt so hopeless, and I felt so just stuck. I didn't know how to move forward. And so I just having these little beautiful interactions with people reminded me that moving forward is the most beautiful thing that we can do for each other.
It's true. And Lucy, you created that piece of community. When you're talking about believe in people, you created that piece of hope for them because you created this experience for them.
I really appreciate that, but I have to credit to all my customers. they gave me that hope. I think I was quickly turning into an early age curmudgeon if I didn't every day.
How about the authors? The authors that the books that you're selling are probably people that couldn't get there anywhere else.
I was really excited. So one of my favorite books is The Mountains Sing. And I just talked with a publisher, and I think I blew their charts with how many copies I sold of that book. And the power that these indie bookstores have in pushing these stories that maybe were being overlooked before, or weren't having as many sales as previous. But we're here just saying, like, this is incredible. And people come in and they're like, wow, this is related so much to generational stories that I didn't really think that my family had or shared. And I see myself in these stories. And I think that talking to all of these authors has created such an incredible community among writers, and the importance of sharing their stories. We worked with the Cosmos earlier this year during the summertime to have a reading series as well. So up and coming writers can share their work. And it became a safe place for us to really have our work showcased and be able to safely share these stories that maybe weren't as accepted before.
And the future of the indie bookstore is?
Thriving. I hope.
I'm happy to hear that.
Well, Lucy,
I'm so happy to hear that.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your indie story of your whole darn life, because your whole life sounds so fascinating. And please give your love to your mom and your customer, your authors, and ever gather up the courage to return to New York someday. From my, by the way, I am talking to you from Canada right now, and it's not so cold at the moment. But I will looking forward to dropping in and exchanging a bubble tea for a latte.
I got you a latte on the time.
How about you, Amy?
Absolutely. Can't wait to see your bookstore, Lucy. Thank you so much.
Thanks for being with us.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you. Kevin, I am so inspired, and I am inspired because I am thrilled that bookstores are thriving, and the small bookstore of Lucy's is shining brightly. I love the feeling of a book. It's that tactile feeling of running through my fingers through the pages, and I'm just thrilled to hear that she's representing those who are otherwise not sort of bred in the sort of common market.
I'm just very happy to hear that a young woman whose mother came here with essentially nothing, probably not much of the English language, who set herself up and worked. In many ways, I guess that's what we're supposed to refer to as the American dream. But to me, it's almost more than that. I mean, she's so passionate about what she does, and I guess we both wish her the best of success. So thanks.
Thank you for joining us this week on Believe in People, and we hope you subscribe if you'd like to see this and other stories and podcasts that come to you every week. So thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next week.